Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is a use case about trusted SLAs and more in general, how we can ensure the integrity of SLAs between customer and service providers using ServiceNow and the Hedera blockchain. My name is Nicola Attico and I'm Senior Advisory Solution Consultant at ServiceNow. The content has been built in conjunction with Nigel Clark and the Hedera team. This is the agenda about what we are going to see. Nigel will start with an introduction about the Hedera blockchain and a description of the business opportunity behind trusted SLAs. Then I will describe the use case and the ServiceNow Hedera integrated solution. I will then show a live demo of that solution and finally we will conclude with some takeaways. Now I will hand over to Nigel to cover the first two items.
Thank you, Nicola. So briefly, Hedera is a global decentralized public network that is governed by some of the world's leading organizations such as Google, LG, Nomura, IBM, and many others. More industry leaders are joining all the time, building use cases and steering the direction of the network. And we look forward to even more joining in the future. Most importantly and uniquely in the blockchain or distributed ledger market, Hedera is enterprise grade, meaning that we focus on 4 key aspects that make adoption at scale possible for the enterprise. Firstly, performance. Thousands of transactions per second with time to consensus of approximately 3 seconds at a cost of 1/100%, really low. Secondly, security. Asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance, ABFT, the highest possible. Really important for enterprise. Thirdly, stability. The network is controlled and cannot be forked. And fourthly, of course, governance. This is really important. Governed by the organizations that you see on screen today, and as I say, more and more are joining. In terms of real, measurable market acceptance, which is really vital, well, the network will be the second public network to reach 1 billion transactions, but in half the time of Ethereum. And today, more transactions are processed every day by enterprises building on Hedera's 2 core services, the Hedera Consensus Service and the Hedera Token Service, than any other network. And as a global enterprise network, we see Hedera in use today across almost every industry, from the smallest tomato grower to the largest conglomerate. From payments networks through telecommunications, service providers, manufacturers, not-for-profits, and thankfully, causes for good. In terms of relevance for ServiceNow, there is clear value in the use of Hedera's Consensus service as a global notary service for data integrity. We see many data integrity use cases on Hedera. We see this in many industries, and today we will focus on one example, improving the trust and integrity in SLA data. But this is just one example of how you can use the notary service for notarizing workflows. But obviously this also represents a new business opportunity around the whole area of audit, and we're very excited about that for the service provider. We also see real potential in the tokenization of data. There's a lot of talk about tokenization of data at the moment. In this case, incentivizing knowledge workers to provide intelligence from work completed in the field, but there are many other revenue opportunities with tokenization, and these are only limited by our own imagination. Thirdly, decentralized identity is also of interest as the workforce becomes more fluid and we focus on shorter work cycles and the need to reduce time and cost to hire. Very important in the world of service. But decentralized identity is not just about people. It is also about the management of basic credentials, the credentials for connected assets, for example, the validity in a workflow of a safety certificate for a healthcare asset, for example. And finally, the use of Hedera Consensus Service, the use of Hedera Token Service, the use of Hedera as a global decentralized message bus for building secure, private interactions between distributed ServiceNow and third-party systems, structured and unstructured data. This is an enormous market and represents a significant and natural evolution in the use of blockchain, or DLT. And given Hedera's core characteristics that I've spoken about, there is none better place than Hedera. Quite frankly, there is a huge opportunity for ServiceNow and Hedera together. But let's have a quick look at the trusted SLA, focusing on the first example, and a very quick win. It's a significant area for the client and for the service provider. The trusted SLA. The use of Hedera as a global notary service is extremely valuable as it not only serves to reduce conflict in this case and improve trust between the service provider and the client, but also affords the opportunity for the service provider for the creation of new high-value audit services. Audit as a service, if you like, for SLAs, audit as a service for data integrity, which given the importance of today's service marketplace can only be a good thing. The managed service provider market is just set to grow and grow and grow in line with the growth of the service market as a whole, and therefore it's vital that the integrity of data is assured. The integrity for the client, the integrity for the managed service provider, and the integrity for the auditor as a third-party auditor as well. I'm going to hand back to Nicola now to talk about this use case and show a very simple early demonstration of Hedera integrated to ServiceNow for data integrity for trusted SLAs. Hey Nicola, back to you.
Okay, thanks Nigel. In the following slides and in the demonstration, we will refer then to the following personas. The customer, who is consuming services by a service provider, the service provider providing any kind of services to the customer, the auditor who needs to ensure correctness of SLAs, leveraging Hedera unique capabilities. The relationship between the customer and the service provider is usually regulated by a contract describing the SLAs, the service target, and measurable KPIs that will be overseen by the auditor. It's important to analyze the nature of the customer service provider relationship. One customer can leverage multiple managed service provider or MSPs for different areas like IT, business operation, HR, each relationship being regulated by a contract. The quality of the relationship itself is critical, greatly influenced by the trust in the data exchanged, especially regarding sensitive information like SLAs. Moreover, the MSP needs to differentiate its services and make them compelling for its customers. Of course, an MSP can serve multiple customers, each of them regulated by different contracts and KPIs. When both dimensions are considered together, we see how these relationships form a complex mesh network with strong trust and privacy constraints. This ecosystem can significantly benefit from blockchain-boosted trust. So the problem we are describing is deeply rooted in the contractual relationships between customers and service providers. SLA data today are poor and customers do not always trust the report they receive. The problem is about the integrity of data and in particular integrity of SLAs. The client may also pay services depending on the quality, so is economically interested in data integrity. Moreover, the MSP may be rewarded depending on performance and may be looking to differentiate its services based on the ability to certify data. This unique set of challenges give us the ability to bring in blockchain unique differentiation. What is depicted in this chart is the most traditional MSP outsourcing architecture. The customer uses the ServiceNow service portal to connect to the provider, but not necessarily owns an instance himself. Some customers decide to build more complex architecture to control the outsourcer involving multiple instances, but this is the most basic configuration. We are discussing here an evolution of this setup, potentially involving also a auditor. The three parties will use the Hedera blockchain to sustain their trust relationship, providing a stronger ecosystem. As auditor and MSPs may serve multiple customers, this is also the opportunity to bring in a new type of services. Let's build up how the different parties interact through the Hedera ledger. The Hedera blockchain represents here an underlying infrastructure to notarize records. First of all, the MSP is going to notarize data about the incident and the task SLA table, creating the proof of action. The customer will receive a feed of this information off-chain, and he will be able to verify this information against the Hedera blockchain, even in absence of an owned instance. This allows him to determine data integrity and if any record has been compromised, either by tampering, aiming to falsify SLAs, or by system fault, thus producing trusted SLA reporting. In the same way, the auditor will receive an offline data feed. We are assuming the auditor will analyze the record feed on its own ServiceNow instance in an industrial way for multiple MSPs and regarding multiple customers. With that data, he will be able to produce trusted audit reports for all customers. Last slide before the demonstration to dig a bit deeper in the setup. For each record, incident and task underscore SLA table, the demo defines a notarization mask or the list of fields in the record that is overseen by the notary business rule. Each change within the notarization mask brings in a new trusted record and a hash on chain, increasing a notarization index. The off-chain feed is made by the current and previous states for each record that is hashed on the blockchain and timestamped. The off-chain feed and the on-chain data allows to verify data consistency by setting up rules. In the demonstration, we have created 3 rules, but a much wider set of rules could be developed by third parties and auditors. The first rule is plain notarization, checking that the hash on-chain corresponds to the offline information. The second rule is history data consistency, showing that the history of off-chain verified information is consistent and brings to the last recorded state. The third rule is provided for the MSP himself to check the alignment of what is online in ServiceNow with the history published on Hedera. So with no further ado, let's jump into the demonstration and see how these concepts can be implemented in practice. Okay, so here we are on the demo environment, and let's start with the perspective of the customer of the MSP, and let's open an incident. So let's create incident. My incident, of course, is high priority, and I have a network issue, and let's submit. And here we see already that there is a message coming from Hedera, from the incident notary that has notarized this transaction opening. So let's now switch to the perspective of the MSP operator. So the MSP operator has access to the incident management application and can see that there is an incident coming in his queue. He can open it and start working on that incident. So probably start classifying as a network problem and assigning to himself and save. So here we have more notarization happening. I can now decide that my incident is high priority, and I have to add some note, high priority work, and I can save that one. And now I have more notarization happening, one from the incident notary, the other one from the SLA notary, because an SLA has just been created for resolution. It's a very short one, 1 minute. So it's worth having a look to the trusted records feed, and these are the information which are coming from the MSP to the other party involved, the customer and the auditors. And this information track all the change of states in terms of previous and current for each transaction. And I have the information about the blockchain transaction hash that is recorded with this transaction ID. So now, as the SLA is about to breach, we will see in a moment additional information coming not from manual activities like this one, but coming from business rules. So here it is. We have the information about the fact that the SLA is currently breached. I can come back to my incident with the operator perspective, refresh the list, and see that my SLA has actually been breached. So I can finalize the work on that incident. I can decide that I want to resolve it. So I have some resolution information, workaround, and reboot router, and I can resolve this incident. Okay, and I got this information. So if now I switch to the perspective of the customer, actually I see that the state is resolved, and I can now close my incident. And when I do that, I see further messages coming from Hedera Hashgraph saying that the changes have been notarized. So if I switch back to the SLA feed perspective, we can see that all the information about the incident and SLAs are received. So the state now is closed, and the stage of the SLA is completed. What is interesting is that we have function in this data feed to validate the information. So the first check that I can do is a function called validate that is going to check the content of the transaction compared to the hash logged on the Hedera on this transaction ID, and I can do for all the the trusted records. So I see that everything is consistent. In the same way, I can do validate chain, who is going to check the sequence of changes and validate that current and previous are all consistent in this sequence. So if I do that for both incident and SLA data, I get, I should get all positive results. So we see here that all the data in the feed is correct. One additional capability that I have on the operator side for the incident, I'm having the same trusted records within the incident. So you have the counter and the content of the transaction and all the rest, and I have exactly the same under the SLA information. So you have the trusted record for the SLA as well, which is highly automated because the SLA table is not much touched manually, but it's an automatic table. And another important um, capability that I have here available as a button, but that also can be made automatic as a business rule, for example, is the ability to validate the current version of the record that is within the instance with all the previous history that is logged on the blockchain. So the last mile, so to speak, is validated with this button. So here is doing multiple reads from the blockchain and checking the hash and the sequences. And if everything is correct, it returns a positive outcome. So here I see that all my sequence of changes on this record are considered correct. And then a notarization flag has been set to true. So switching now to the perspective of a third-party auditor on a separate ServiceNow instance receiving feeds of chain from multiple MSPs, serving multiple customers. Um, so what I have now here is an application that is called Hedera Auditor Feed that is receiving all the information in the exact same way that we saw in the Google Sheet. Well, the Google Sheet was using a Google Sheet spoke, while here we can use native capability to replicate records. And we see that these records are validated as they come. So we know that for all the record I'm tracking, and I can group by name to have a clear picture. So for the incident and the SLA, um, both the hash validation and the sequence validation all evaluate correctly. I can simulate the fact that some record is tampered. So for example, I can just change a little bit my JSON here, and I can validate again. So in this case, I get an error both in the hash and in the sequence because the current and previous doesn't match anymore. So this is a case. Another interesting case is deleting one line, so not sending in the feed or sending incorrect information. Anyway, if I remove one line, it's an interesting case because if I validate again, I'm getting now an error not in the hash because the hash are all correct, but there is one record missing, so the sequence is not correct. So this is a high level of verification of the data, so I can highly trust the data that are marked correct through this process. In the application, the Hedera auditor feed, I can also easily build some dashboard, of course, and see what is the current state for all my hash validation and my sequence validation, and I can dig in the data. So for example, here I can see that this trusted record is incorrectly evaluated. I can also explore the Hedera blockchain transaction through the Dragon Glass blockchain explorer. So this ends up the demonstration, and I hand over to Nigel for the final comments and takeaways.
Thank you, Nicola. Very good. In this trusted SLA use case, we've seen how organizations can use Hedera to shift the burden of proof for data integrity to the global public network, a network comprising some of the world's largest and most trusted organizations. It is a compelling use case and was simple to build, and clearly there's an opportunity to go much further and create a rich user experience and set up new audit services. But the trusted SLA use case is just the first simple step. Tokenization, identity, and the use of Hedera as a global, decentralized, secure message bus for data synchronization between different systems is an even further opportunity. We look forward to working with the managed service provider community, the clients and the auditors to move new client discussions and new services.